7 contractor red flags, and the 10-minute vetting routine. Stop scrolling, because if you live on the shore, somebody is about to knock on your door, quote you a today-only price, and ask for a deposit before you've even had time to call your spouse. And here's the part people don't want to say out loud. Most families don't get burned because they're careless. They get burned because they're busy. They're trying to keep the house upright while life is happening. Kids, work, storms, summer rentals, a leaky roof that suddenly becomes an emergency. So today, we're going to do something simple. We're going to learn the 7 red flags that show up right before a project goes sideways, and then we're going to lock in a 10-minute routine that helps you hire with confidence. Act 0. Cold open. Let's name the fear clearly. On the Jersey Shore, home repairs are not hypothetical. They're not nice to have. They're the basement took on water, the deck feels soft, the roof flashed wrong, the HVAC gave up on the first 90-degree week, the bathroom fan has been venting into the attic for years, the siding is letting moisture in. And when you're under pressure, your brain does this dangerous thing. It starts optimizing for speed instead of safety. We tell ourselves, at least they answered the phone. At least they can start tomorrow. At least the price doesn't make me faint. But fast and cheap is exactly the lane where bad actors thrive. In New Jersey, there's a reason the state requires home improvement contractor businesses to register annually with the Division of Consumer Affairs. And there's a reason the number is supposed to show up on contracts and advertising, because the number is how a consumer checks that the business exists in the system before money changes hands. So our fear frame today is this. If we don't build a tiny verification habit, we're basically hiring a stranger to operate heavy tools on the one asset most families can't afford to lose. Now, here's the reframe. We don't need to become construction experts. We don't need to learn every line of the building code. We don't need to become that person who starts an argument over every screw. We just need a repeatable process. The goal isn't to find a contractor who says all the right things. The goal is to find a contractor who can be verified and who is willing to be verified. And once you realize that, the whole conversation changes. Instead of, "Can you start tomorrow?" we start with, "Can you email the estimate with your registration number and insurance certificate?" Instead of, "What's your best price?" we ask, "What exactly is included and what would be a change order?" Instead of, "I hope this works out," we move into, "I know how I'll check progress and protect the payment schedule." That's the pivot. All right, 7 red flags and then the 10-minute vetting routine. Red flag number 1, they won't put it in writing. If someone refuses to give a written estimate, refuses to describe the scope, or tries to keep everything verbal.
Before we get into the red flags, let me sit in the Jersey Shore reality for a minute, because the patterns we're about to name show up the strongest right after a storm. After every nor'easter, after every late summer hurricane that grazes us on its way north, the trucks show up. Out-of-state plates, magnetic signs slapped on the doors, a guy with a clipboard walking the block, knocking, pointing up at your roof, telling you he can see damage from the curb that somehow your insurer hasn't noticed yet. Sometimes those people are real. Most of the time, they're not. They're storm chasers. They run a cycle, arrive after the disaster, take large deposits across a whole neighborhood, do a few quick patch jobs, and disappear before any of the work has to be warrantied. By the time you realize the shingles don't match, the flashing was never reset, and the rain is still coming through that same upstairs ceiling, the truck is in another state. And the heartbreaking part is that this works because we're vulnerable. After a storm, we want it fixed. We want our kids back in the bedrooms. We want the water out of the basement before it ruins the boxes from grandma's house. So when someone shows up and says, "I can start tomorrow morning," we want to believe them. The other version of this is the bait-and-switch quote. The first number they hand you is friendly, $12,000 to replace the roof. You shake hands, they tear off the old layer, and then suddenly the deck underneath is worse than expected. The price goes to 19, then 22, then 25 before you stop counting. And you're stuck because they have already opened up the house, and you can't just send them home with a tarp. The trick in both of those patterns is the same. They depend on you skipping the boring part, skipping the registration check, skipping the insurance verification, skipping the written scope, skipping the references. They depend on you being too tired, too overwhelmed, too kind, or too embarrassed to ask the question that protects you. So when we talk about red flags, we are not being uptight. We are not being a difficult customer. We are not making the job harder than it has to be. We are doing the one thing that bad actors hate the most. We are slowing the transaction down to the speed of paperwork. That is the speed where a real contractor thrives and a fake one starts looking for a different door to knock on. Okay, with that in our
One will include permit fees, another will not mention them at all. When you compare 3 bids side by side, the gaps become visible. That low bid might look great until you realize it does not include debris removal, or the permit, or the 3 days of drywall prep that the other 2 contractors called out explicitly. Third, contractor character. How a contractor handles the bidding process tells you a great deal about how they will handle the job. Do they show up on time for the estimate? Do they explain their numbers? Do they ask good questions about what you need? Do they pressure you to decide immediately? The bidding process is an audition. 3 auditions give you actual options. And fourth, and this one matters in New Jersey specifically, comparing bids gives you a reason to look up each contractor's registration before you decide. Every contractor you call, you verify. Every contractor who shows up for a walkthrough, you check their HIC registration number. By the time you have 3 bids in hand, you have 3 verified, registered contractors to choose from. That alone puts you in an entirely different position from the families in those 2023 enforcement actions. Let me give you the practical steps. This is the actual playbook. Step 1. Define your project before you call anyone. Write it down. Square footage, what you want done, materials you prefer or will accept, timeline, permit responsibility, cleanup expectations. You do not need a contractor to write this. You just need a clear, honest description of the job. This document is what you hand to every contractor who shows up to bid. If every contractor is bidding on the same job, the comparisons are meaningful. If they are each guessing at different versions of what you want, the numbers are noise. Step 2. Verify before you invite. The New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs requires every home improvement contractor to register annually. You can verify any contractor's registration at newjersey.mylicense.com. That is the business search portal. Search by business name, look for the HIC registration number, confirm it is active, and make sure it matches the number on any advertising or business card the contractor has given you. If they cannot produce a registration number, they cannot legally pull a permit in New Jersey. That is the end of the conversation. Step 3. Get the bids in writing. For any project over $500, New Jersey law requires a written contract, but you want your bids in writing before it ever gets to a contract. An itemized written estimate with labor costs, material costs, permit fees, subcontractor work called out separately, and a timeline is the only kind of estimate you can actually compare. A number on a scrap of paper is not a bid. It is a suggestion. Step 4. Compare line by line, not bottom line. Take your 3 written estimates and lay them next to each other. Look at each line item. Is the same brand or grade of material specified? Are permit fees included or excluded? What are the payment terms? A contractor asking for 50% up front is a materially different risk than one asking for 10%. What is the warranty on labor? What happens if there is an unexpected problem? A bid that is 20% cheaper than the other 2 deserves hard questions about what it is leaving out.
Now, I want to spend a couple of minutes on the inside of that 10-minute routine because there are a few details worth getting right. On payments, a healthy structure for most home improvement work in New Jersey looks something like this. A modest deposit to secure the slot and order materials. A progress payment when the materials arrive on site or a milestone is hit. A final payment after the work is finished, inspected when an inspection applies, and the site is cleaned. The numbers shift depending on the job, but the principle is the same. You should be paying for work that has already happened or materials you can see, not for a vague promise. If a contractor wants 40 or 50% of the total before anyone shows up with a hammer, that is not a deposit anymore. That is a loan, and you are the bank. On insurance, do not just collect a certificate and put it in a folder. Look for two things on it. General liability covers damage to your property if something goes wrong. Workers' compensation covers the people who do the work if they get hurt on your job. If a worker falls on your property and there is no workers' compensation policy in place, the path to your homeowner's insurance and your savings gets a lot shorter than you would like. Call the insurer number printed on the certificate. Ask if the policy is currently active and if the contractor business is the named insured. 30 seconds, done. On change orders, write them down, every single one. A change order is just a tiny amendment to the contract that says, we agreed to do X for Y, and now we are also doing Z for an additional amount. Both sides sign. Without that, a contractor can claim verbal agreements after the fact, and you will not remember exactly what was said in the driveway on a Tuesday in July. On what to do if things are already sideways. First, document. Take photos. Save text messages. Keep a one-page timeline of what was promised, what was delivered, and what was paid. Second, stop paying ahead of work. Tie every future dollar to a concrete completed milestone. Third, if the contractor refuses to engage in good faith, you can file a complaint with the New Jersey Division of Consumer Affairs and use the license verification portal to check the registration status of the business. The state takes home improvement complaints seriously, especially when a registration is on the line. And here is where love of humanity fits in. Plainly, the reason we built LocalJobs at localjobs.advalorem.io is exactly this. Shore families needed a place where verified, transparent contractors compete for work and where the bid history and the paperwork are visible. It's a free way to get more than one quote side by side from businesses whose registration and insurance you can check. If you are a homeowner, you can post a project and watch real bids come in. If you're a local contractor who already does it right, you can list your business and pick up work from neighbors who actually want to verify before they sign. That's the whole point. Make the boring stuff easy.
And if you're a local contractor who does it right, clear paperwork, fair milestones, clean sites, we want you in the ecosystem. LocalJobs exists to connect Shore families with businesses that can be verified. Act 5, close, 10 to 10:30. Let's bring it home. The mission here isn't to turn every homeowner into an investigator. It's to protect the family. When we verify first, we don't just avoid scams. We avoid the slow, expensive mistakes that drain a household. Do the 10 minutes. Trust the process, and we'll keep building a shore where families can breathe. See you on the boards.